So greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Dale Barzi. And as always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe. Leave us a message. Let us know what you think. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey, from students to retirees and anywhere in between. Today, it is my great pleasure to welcome Michelle Podlesni. Michelle is a United States Navy veteran, an RN for over 35 years, and former corporate executive whose clinical background led to a career in healthcare information technology, medical cost containment, and software development. Michelle brought her service orientation enthusiasm and diverse expertise to the corporate environment in roles from case management to product development to C-level executive management positions. She has a proven track record of leadership, success in executive management of startups, and established multi-million-dollar SaaS, a software as a service, companies for serving Fortune 500 clients. Having made the decision to turn her business expertise towards coaching and training, Michelle wrote the bestseller Unconventional Nurse, Going from Burnout to Bliss. She instructs nurses on the pivotal business skills that will accelerate, increase, and maximize nurse businesses owner success. As a result of Unconventional Nurse Going from Burnout to Bliss being published in 2013, being an author, speaker, coach, and serial entrepreneur led Michelle to being recruited in 2014 to become the president of the National Nurses in Business Association, which was established in 1985. The NNBA provides valuable business information customized for nurses, insight into healthcare industry trends, mentoring and continued education in professional growth and career development. The NNBA is Nurses Bridge to Business. Michelle, that's quite a bit.
It is. It is.
Well, thank you so very much for doing this. I truly appreciate it. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this.
Well, I've been looking forward to it.
Me too, actually. Me too. So one of the things I want to know, first of all, is why? Why are you a nurse?
Oh, that's such a good question. I always thought I was going to be a nurse. And so from very early on, I have one of those pictures with a little nurse hat and my baby dolls when I was little. But, I went through, for a short while, I went through a traditional path. I was a candy striper. I was a lifeguard and first aid instructor for years. And then I belonged to the Future Nurses Club in our high school, which I don't know that they have them anymore, but it was wonderful. We visited all the nursing universities, colleges, and programs in the area. And it just so happened that I took an unconventional path to go to nursing. I joined the Navy. There was a nursing program in the Navy that I was going to take part of, and they stopped it the second year that I was in the Navy. So I finished my 4 years being a corpsman, working in naval hospitals. And when I left, I had the GI Bill, and that paid for my nursing. And that's kind of was my pathway. But I've always been very service oriented. So I knew I was going to be a nurse.
And okay, so I particularly ask this question of people who always wanted to be nurses. And so I want to know, if you always wanted to be a nurse, when you became a nurse, was it what you thought it was going to be?
Oh, that and more. I mean, it has unfolded. There's so much more I never would have believed. So for example, I never would have believed working in the critical care unit of my local hospital, which was 3 blocks from my grandparents' house, a mile from my house. I never would have believed that 15 years later, I'd be the president of a software company in California. I mean, and that was all my nursing. It was all my nursing that prepared me for that.
Yeah. And you use that word prepare because nursing does prepare you for a whole lot of stuff.
It does and it doesn't, you know. It kind of goes, everything goes out the window those first, several months, first year, that
Mm-hmm,
you're a new
mm-hmm,
nurse. But
mm-hmm.
it does. It's a wonderful preparation. And I've never known a nurse, in business or not, that regretted becoming a nurse. How they express that role, being a
Yeah.
nurse,
Mm-hmm.
is different, and
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people, leave that, but they never regret the education
Mm-hmm.
and the experience.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. It teaches you so many things. I mean, much of it actually doesn't even really have anything to do with nursing. A lot of it is about you,
As a person, that's
and how
true.
you show up. Yeah.
Yeah, self-development.
Hmm.
That's also what I say about entrepreneurship. Nothing teaches you more about yourself than being in business. It unfolds all kinds of areas and
So as you
potential.
and potential, and
Hmm.
potential, yes. Yeah. So as you bring up entrepreneur, well, let me go back a little bit because you did
Go
mention
ahead.
working in intensive care.
Hmm.
So what kind of areas did you work? Is it just intensive care?
No, it was mostly critical care, but I finished my career before I left to go into the business world, um, as a med surge charge nurse.
Hmm.
And I enjoyed that quite a bit. I traveled quite a bit and was in different areas. And at the time I was in Chicago,
Hmm.
and I was a charge nurse of a local hospital, and I loved it. And I loved the people there. The nurses there were great.
Hmm. Hmm. And so what made you segue into entrepreneurship?
The same thing as most other nurses. I got burned out. When I was nursing, I'm going to really date myself, but that's okay because I've been doing it almost 40 years now. Um, at the time, it was 8-hour shifts, but
Hmm.
it was every other weekend and it was holidays.
Hmm.
And, it was always, always a struggle to get the holiday off that you wanted to get off, and, trying to figure out schedules. And I had it from both ends, my scheduling myself, scheduling others. And at that point, I had been providing nursing care for 10 years. And so I was like, I really would like my life to be more aligned with my friends and family. And my
Hmm.
friends and families had weekends off and they had the holidays off.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that's when I started looking. It was at that point, it was like, let me see what else I can do with this nursing.
So what was your first business?
So it wasn't my first business. I went into the business world. The first time when I left was working for a very large group insurance company in
Wow.
Chicago called Bankers Life. And I
Hmm.
worked with 100 claims examiners, and I interpreted all the notes and operation reports for them so they could see if it contractually was covered and how it was covered. That's where it kind of started. I was a healthcare resource specialist, which was their name for basically a case manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but the fascinating part about that and doing something new is it introduced me to computers. It
Mm.
was the first time that I was using them and seeing the power in, aggregating a lot of healthcare data and analysis. So it was fascinating and I loved it. I just loved it. I just thrived.
Hmm. Hmm. I can hear that now as you speak
Mhm.
about it.
Well, here's what's interesting. I still do catastrophic case management 10 hours a week. So from 1985 until today, I've
Wow.
done case management type work since
Wow.
then.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And I'm sure that has unfolded in many ways.
Oh my gosh, it like evolved and changed, and with different moves, and I went from that environment to I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Texas Medical Foundation or the Georgia Medical Care Foundation.
Yeah, okay.
These are nonprofits that serve by review of Medicare and Medicaid billing. And
Yeah.
so I got very involved in that next, and utilization review. And that's where I became a utilization review manager. And it was wonderful. It was like learning coding and understanding the specifics of how things were reimbursed in our healthcare system.
Yeah.
And then evaluating standards of care and checking for fraud and abuse. So
Yeah.
that was a great experience too.
Wow. And and all of that because you became a nurse.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so you describe yourself as a serial entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah, what else do you have under your belt?
Pardon me?
I said, what else do you have under your belt?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, so when I left there, I was actually recruited away to a company called Crawford and Company, a very large third-party administrator. But how I was recruited was I was trying to hire a doctor that I was interviewing to be a peer reviewer at the Georgia Medical Care Foundation. And he in turn hired me, and he asked me to be, get this, a software product manager liaison. I would interpret what we were going to do with this software and billing and such to the programmers because he thought that I understood standards of care, I understood coding, and I could talk to the programmers about what they needed to produce. And in that role, I opened up 4 offices for Crawford around the country using this software product. It was called Sentinel. And it was during that time that it dawned on me. And I went, I can do this myself. Yeah. And it was really interesting when I went to resign because I was planning to do it myself. Yeah. And the VP that I was resigning to or whatever said, give me a couple weeks. And it ended up that we both left and started a company called General Care Review. And with that company, I opened up 28 offices around the country and had nurses in each of those offices being branch managers. So it was very exciting. That was my first real entrepreneurial activity. After I left that role, after 5 years or whatever, I was recruited to a software company out in Newport Beach, California. And they wanted me to run the company. They were handing over the keys. And so I decided to do that because I had a partial equity position with that company. Okay. So it was very entrepreneurial again. But after we had the acquisition that we were looking for a few years after that, then it was on my own. And I never looked back. It was like, no, it's time. It's just going to be what I'll be doing. So you asked about entrepreneurship and myself. So true entrepreneurship, when I, separate from a big corporate entity. My husband and I opened up a senior care company. And it just so happened that I had my daughter very late in life. So I'm in my mid 40s. And I was done traveling because at the time I traveled probably 3 weeks a month. And so it was like, okay, we've got to come up with something. So when we found out that we were pregnant, I said, okay, let's move back east because we were in California. Let's move back east. Let's be around family. And let's start a senior care company because I think this senior care stuff is getting big. and we need to get into that. So this was 2002. And so at that point, we started our own company. We had 70 caregivers working for us. It was a wonderful community environment. So I really enjoyed that because I got back to patients, clients,
Yeah.
however you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and assessing them and developing plans of care for our caregivers. And so it was totally wonderful. And we did that until our daughter was ready for first grade because we said we were going to move back west. And we
Mm-hmm.
picked up and moved back west. And that's when I started writing my book. And I always knew I was going to write a book, but that's when I started writing Unconventional Nurse, Going from Burnout to Bliss. And with that became a coach, a workshop leader, a speaker, an author. And I was asked to speak. And
Mm-hmm.
probably 6 months after Unconventional Nurse was published, the NNBA president at the time contacted me to speak at the 2013 conference. And I did. And several months later, I ended up being at the helm of the NNBA because she thought that I was the right person to take it over. So
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
happened. So NNBA is a business, and so I have to know online
Yeah.
marketing and everything with providing education out there and resources for nurses that are interested in entrepreneurship. So that's kind of the steps in there. And like I said, I still do consulting
Yeah.
about 10 hours a week for a major corporate client out of California
Yeah.
on catastrophic bills. So it's a mix of all kinds of things, which we promote. We always tell people
Yeah.
be involved in a few things.
Yeah. And what as I'm listening to you talk, what strikes me, as I'm listening to you to tell me about this, what strikes me is that you had the confidence and the courage to step into these roles. And that is something that I would like to see more nurses do. Just step into it. We tend to be a little bit timid and think that, you know, well, maybe that's not for me. But it is. You've got what it takes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I think about things of nurses and what they need and what about them makes them, so strong. Well, it's the courage. And they have courage to go every day that they don't know exactly what situation they're going to encounter,
Yeah,
whether it's at the bedside or it's in business. They don't know, but they have the courage and
yeah,
they have this belief to act, and they can see the optimal outcome that they're going for.
yeah,
So I think nurses are incredible. And I always say nurses are in business from the moment they pass their NCLEX. And it's just shifting that paradigm
mm-hmm,
shift.
mm-hmm,
That when you have that nursing license, that's a license to do nursing practice. Where you decide to
to
do
do
that
it
nursing practice is up to you.
entirely.
But you are a business owner from the moment you get that business license.
That's
So
that that's
it's
an
kind of my
awesome way to
belief.
look at it. That's an excellent way to look at it.
Mhm.
Where, you mentioned you spoke about being, almost 40 years, a 40-year nurse. I have 9 years on you. And in that,
Fantastic. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
oh, thank you. But in that time, um, nursing has changed. It has evolved so much.
It
And
really has.
I'm looking forward, and I see so many changes, especially in the last few years. And so I'm asking, what do you think nursing will look like in about 10 years?
I don't know what it'll look like. I know what I hope it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hope it looks like is nurses are independently practicing nursing. And that's going to affect everything from how nurses are reimbursed
Yeah.
and how they are respected. I think it's such an issue with a lot of nurses that they are put in situations that they're not comfortable
Yeah.
and that they're taken advantage of. And I think nurses need to claim their personal power when it comes to their careers. I think that some entities perhaps could serve nurses better that are out there. And that nurses need to understand these options from day one in their nursing education environment, not just MBA programs or, nurse master's programs / some business and executive leadership courses, not just there. There's the power that nurses have to change things and themselves should be from day one, and them allowed to see different options of how to use their nursing education.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I asked that question of everyone. One, because I want to know how they see it, but two, because I really want people to stop and articulate where would we be? What would it look like? How can I participate in this evolving thing that we have going on? It's so exciting and so full of promise and, opportunity. What does self-care mean to you?
Well, like I believe that you can't pour from an empty cup. You've got to have your own cup filled. And I try to do that physically, mentally, spiritually. What that kind of looks like is trying to make sure that I eat, well and nutritious. I move my body a lot, and that, that I'm in a place of gratitude and an appreciation. And I find a lot of that in nature. So by doing that, I'm full, and then I can provide for others that I want to. So I try to be my best self so I can be my best for others. And that's just, that's my philosophy of self-care.
Yeah. And again, there's a particular reason I ask all nurses that. And again, because, our nursing education, and maybe it's beginning to creep into the education, but primarily it's not about, we're not included in the equation when it comes to education and taking care of ourselves. Education is focused on taking care of others, taking care of others, taking care of others. And there's nothing wrong with taking care of others, but you can't do it if you're not, as you said, if you are not full yourself.
Absolutely. And, haven't we all been at that place where we're empty?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not pretty. It's not pretty in how we deal with others,
It's not pretty.
As we become more experienced and wiser, we know that when it's time, we know. But it takes some time and experience to get there. So I want to encourage nurses to, develop good self-care, but I also know that it's through experience sometimes that we learn how vital it is.
Yeah. Even when we talk about it, even when we articulate it, sometimes it doesn't necessarily resonate until we get to a place where we're like, okay, I have to do something here.
Well, it's really funny. Now I recognize it very soon. For the most part, I don't have many times where I feel depleted. Because I would say that nurses, for the most part, this is how I would describe it. Nurses are very dedicated, but nurses are depleted, in most situations, especially in a hospital environment. So when I get myself depleted, when I can't stop my mind, I'm just ruminating on things and I feel anxiety. I know time to get out of the house, time to, go walk in the grass, time to get away for a day or so, time to play. One of the things that I think is essential is playing and doing things that make you feel good. Like for me, I really enjoy cooking and baking. And
Mhm.
I can get into such a zone with that everything else goes away.
Yeah, yeah,
When I'm done, I'm refreshed. I'm ready to go.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sharp again. And so
Mhm.
I think that play is very, very important for creativity and refreshing.
Absolutely, absolutely. They say all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
True. So true.
So there you go. Risa, I cannot tell you how thrilled I am that I had the opportunity to talk to you.
Oh, wonderful. It's been great.
It's been great. Do you have any gems you'd like to leave us with?
Boy, I don't know about any gems. Like I said, I do believe 100%, and it's why I wrote Unconventional Nurse Going from Burnout to Bliss, that nurses can do anything and they
Mm,
make such a difference in other people's life. And it's always been a goal of mine
yeah,
through Unconventional Nurse and now through the National Nurses in Business Association to help nurses make a difference in their own life, to
yeah,
help them design, create, and develop a business and a life that they're in love with and they're excited about. I
yeah.
think nurses are wonderful and I love serving them.
Thank you so much. That's a great note to end it on. Thank you so very
Yeah.
much.
Well, thank you, Dale.